to our next speaker, which is giving us our keynote remarks, and that is Patricia Torres-Burd from the MDIF. And as Managing Director, Patricia uses her expertise in media development, launch, and operations to work with MDIF's supported projects as their needs develop across their operational, audience reach, and measurement, engagement, and product considerations. Thank you so much, and over to you.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here. Forgive me, I'm having voice issues today of all day. I just downloaded the Nielsen report, so thank you. Thank you so much, Prudence. I thought your presentation was excellent. I think everybody's presentations were fantastic. I've been online the whole time. And let me start by saying that I live by imposter syndrome every single day. So I am not an expert in anything. So honored to be part of this, but I hope that whatever little insight I can give you is helpful to you. And it's because I learned from people like yourselves and the clients we work with. So let me quickly introduce myself. I am Patricia Torres-Burd. As Benguiga kindly said, I work for Media Development Investment Fund that has been mentioned a couple of times here. The department that I run is called Media Advisory Services, and think of us as an in-house agency and an agency for all of our clients. When a client becomes part of our portfolio, of which currently we have 85 clients around the world, then they have access to the department I run with a great team of people for what we call venture and technical assistance support for the life of their relationship with us at no cost to them. So while MDIF is not a grantor, I want to be really clear with that because I think there's been a lot of conversations about grant making and investment. We are not against grants, by the way. We love them. We ourselves get grants. The work that we do is investment. So how we do it is that we either provide as low as possible interest loans, depending on the country where we're investing, and or in some situations, media are not ready for a loan or cannot afford a loan, but they are interested in a partner and a shareholder. MDIF then would never take more than 25% shareholding, and that is a much more complicated process because you have to have revenue that's coming in. You have to be a bit profitable for that. In terms of the investments that we do, we've got loans out for as little as, I believe the smallest loan right now is $15,000 for a media company that we've been supporting for 15 years. She pays off her loan, she comes back. Our clients stay with us for a very long time because I think we really value relationships. And I was just checking before this. I think our largest investment right now is 30 million US dollars. So you can see it's a huge difference between clients, but it allows me and my team to learn a lot from everybody. I have presented a slide deck that I hope will give you some ideas on what we think is sustainable media today and some of the examples that people are doing that I think you might be able to steal some recipes from. I don't believe that what somebody is doing in India or in Croatia is applicable to South Africa and vice versa, but there's always one or two ingredients in there that you can take and apply to that. So if you'll allow me, is that okay that I can start sharing the slide?
Yes, that's fun. Thank you.
Okay. And bear with me because I want to make sure I do the right screen. Because I'm really bad at this, you guys. And I'm really bad at this. So give me just a second. And here we go. And let's see, can you see? Aha, it worked. It's a miracle. So again, I learned from the people that we have the honor to work with, and I hope that this presentation will give you some ideas. I put in the chat, there's going to be some QR codes at the very end of this presentation, so have your phones ready. And let's fingers crossed that this works. We have talked a lot about branding and the media landscape, and some of your questions in the chat are, how do I enter? What do I do? How do I price myself? How does somebody even begin? And I think that the definition of media has greatly shifted. It used to be, radio, TV. Prudence was so great about audio and podcasting and radio. But now we're competing against everything from Substack to Netflix to everything on our phone. And so if you're thinking about launching something or you're working very much in that, Be cognizant that it's become harder than ever. I think it's a really challenging business to get into right now. I don't want to discourage you, but I think it's very important to be realistic with everything that was said earlier with Sindile and Toon and Asha, who was so impressive. It's hard. It's a hard business. And people have a limited amount of time in order for you to get their attention. And so you really have to work 10 times harder to provide that value add. I think the word innovation is thrown around a lot. And what does that really mean? It just means thinking outside the box. What to you is inspiring? What to you is something that you think other people will relate to? We find that most really great entrepreneur businesses, whether they're media or not, are to fill a need that someone saw was really missing and that other people could relate to. Try and think of it that way and not as traditional media that you've thought about in the past. With that, I'm going to take the liberty of showing you something that is an unusual example, but bear with me. There is a stock investment company called Invesco that is a global company who is trying to find a way to better reach a demo that was not the retirees 55 plus and was also not the Gen Z, but they really focused on the 35 to 55 age group. And they went to a couple of agencies and they've come up with this amazing partnership with, of all things, globally renowned chefs. Who would have thought? Let's see if I can play this video. Fingers crossed that it works and that you can hear it.
The innovation really came from not just cooking with my head, but cooking with my heart.
It's always like, how can I make something a little bit better?
For 25 years, the Invesco QQQ ETF has enabled anyone to invest in 100 of the world's most innovative companies. And our research revealed that those investors are 55% more passionate about fine dining and celebrity chefs. So we did what no financial brand had ever done: teach people about its ETF through the universal language of food.
This is a recipe for innovation presented by Invesco QQQ.
5 renowned chefs challenged to create 25 recipes, all inspired by innovative companies inside the Invesco QQQ ETF. Product content disguised as the gastronomic entertainment our audience loves.
This is the cloud, inspired by Adobe.
Inspired by Google.
Inspired by Microsoft.
Inspired by Netflix.
Everything lived on tasteqqq.com, where food lovers and investors alike could dive deeper. A robust media plan leveraged chef audiences and content partnerships such as Food and Wine, Bon Appetit, and New York Times Cooking. 100 plus pieces of content launched across social media. We even published a 128-page cookbook featuring all the recipes from the series, alongside product info. The campaign culminated in Invesco QQQ's presenting sponsorship of the largest food festival in New York City, and a first-of-its-kind hologram pop-up where AI technology turned every guest into a culinary innovator. The campaign exceeded expectations. 88 million video views, over 8 billion impressions, 3.4 million visits to tasteqqq.com, a 14% lift in unaided brand awareness, and an 8.3% lift in consideration. And millions saw the benefits of including Invesco QQQ ETF in their portfolio.
That is truly delicious.
Whoops. Now let's see if I can get it to go to the next slide. Forgive me. Whoops, that we don't want. Give me a second. Sorry, guys. So why did I show you that video? I showed you that video because Prudence was talking a little bit about, she talked a lot about making sure that you tell your story, about making sure that you engage with your advertiser. I think that the people that created the marketing campaign for Invesco really told a beautiful story and people engaged. Now, none of us have this kind of money. None of us have this kind of ideas. But as I look at that branding campaign, first of all, it's innovative. Second of all, it's engaging. Third of all, it's across a multitude of platforms. And I would guess that there probably are some people in this attendee list that would say, gosh, I could do that with local artists, or I could do that maybe with local chefs, or maybe there's local TV personalities, or a million local entrepreneurs. There's a million other things that you could do to tell a story about what you're trying to do. As Prudence rightly said, and I think Toon touched on this, and Sindile touched on this, and I know Asha really touched on this, is that your branding, who you are, what you stand for is so important. I believe, and I think a lot of people believe in this, that your brand and what it stands for is your single most important asset. You can always move buildings, you can always, staff will change, as we know. Your website, there's a value to it, but your brand, if you really know what your brand is, trust me, people will become really addicted to what you do. With that said, one of the things that we haven't touched a lot about on this entire day seminar is the audience and consumer. And I'm mentioning it now. I know that Asha really talked about who she serves. Toon was so fantastic in terms of focusing on women in radio. Zindelia and the 2 languages that they do. Kathy and what she does. And of course, Prudence's last event on branding. But think of your audience as your consumer product. So if we were building a cup, or if we were building a pen, who would consume it? The content that you report on or create, that is product, and you have to figure out who is going to consume it. And then how do you brand it to them? How do you market it to them so that they become your loyal followers, they become your brand lovers, and that it is then that you can present those engaged people to your advertisers. Prudence talked a bit on market research and market analysis, and those are scary words to journalists. Oh my God, how am I going to do that? And I want to tell you something. I'm a former journalist. I'm a former war correspondent, and some people said I went to the dark side. I'm now in the investment side. But if I can do market research and market analysis, everybody else can. And nowadays, I think what Prudence just shared on the Nielsen report is I'm dying to do a deep dive into that, but nowadays, with AI, you can go into ChatGPT and say, I'm thinking of launching a media that's going to focus on this. This is content, and this is the area that I'm going to be working in. This is the community that I'm going to serve. Can you give me some data on that? And you'll be amazed at what you can find. Yes, you have to fact check it because ChatGPT is known to hallucinate, but really understand who you're talking to so that you can have a conversation that is 2 ways. And I think it is going to go a long way towards not only making your work much more successful, much more engaging, but as Prudence said, much more sellable and be able to have sponsorships. Let me tell you about a client that we have that I think exemplifies this strategic focus on brand and knowing who their audience is. They launched as a tiny little media in 2015, and they were the very first digital media in Croatia to introduce subscription-based model for news. Croatia has 4.5 million population. They got incredible pushback on people having to pay for news, and it wasn't every content. They had a paywall. I think at the time you could read three free articles and then go through the pay, but they stuck to it. And why did they stick to their strategy? They had already done an incredible amount of surveys. They had asked their readers. They had reached out to people. They had everybody they met. They said, if we ever do anything where people have to pay for news, would you be willing to pay for it? They priced it correctly. They didn't go too high because they understood the market, and they stuck to their strategy. And today, they have a very small subscription base. It's only 10,000 out of a country of 4.5 million. But that particular subscription revenue model accounts for their diversified revenue, and subscription is 30% of their revenue. They have advertising, and I'm about to share with you a couple of other verticals that they have. Telegram does not focus on breaking news. They're not going to cover the accident or anything that's happening. They are known for deep investigative pieces. And since 2015, their entire focus is defending their brand as the most independent and unbiased news media organization in Croatia. One of the things that they did that I find extremely unique but innovative is that they had an opinion writer, a journalist that was very well respected, who came to them. He would write for them twice a month. And he came to them and he said, I'm writing a book about my son who died by suicide in the United States. And I'd like to have your permission that I can mention this book once it's ready for print. The team in the newsroom sat down and said, suicide is something that is never discussed in Croatia. Croatia is a largely a Catholic country, and we all know that in certain parts of the world, suicide is taboo. People don't discuss it. And they decided that they would help him publish it and that they would make this book available to their readers. Again, they had talked about their newsroom, they talked about their ethics. The book was so successful, it actually sold out of all the copies that they printed in 48 hours. I think it had to do with the writer, but also with the subject matter. And what Telegram decided to do with this, and why I'm mentioning it to you, is that they created a mental health that goes along with one of our presenters today, and a lot of the conversations focused on our well-being. They created a mental health special column that comes out every Saturday, and it has become one of the #1 popular columns that they have for Telegram. So they took an accidental learning about a book. They included it, and now it's become a key part of their weekly coverage. They then decided to do the same thing and include other books. I believe at the moment, their total amount of books that they've published is 19. They never thought they were going to get into book publishing. They really did not. And these aren't cheap books. They average about 20 euros, and I should have done the calculations. Sorry, before this presentation, I forgot to do that. They're not cheap, but they are selling out of those books, and they tie in the content of the book when they launch them to something else that they're doing in their news to provide what Toon and Zindile and Asha talked about, provide a lot of cross information to their clients. So where Telegram investigates and holds those in power to account, they don't have a problem in talking about suicide and the other matters in the books. It's a revenue model. Subscription is 30% of the revenue model. The books are about 10%. In April 1st, they decided with one staff member, a good staff member, somebody that knew what they were doing, to launch their very first foray into podcasting. And they launched a very important daily short newscast. It's called The First Voice of the Day. They launched April 1, and I just checked this morning. It is still the #1 podcast with over 2 million downloads, with 44,000 average listeners to each one since the launch, and it continues to be, and it's beating The Economist and the BBC and all other podcasts in Croatia. I mentioned this to you for 2 reasons. Remember at the beginning, I said they launched in 2015 and they were very strategic about what they were and what they were going to do, and most important, their audience. I don't want to take anything away from this amazing team that's launched this podcast, but I don't believe they would have been #1 or remain #1 if they hadn't had a brand that people recognized. And I'm sure that a lot of people in Croatia who are not Telegram readers said, wait, now these guys are launching a podcast. Let me check it out. What has happened? By launching the podcast, they've grown their readers to Telegram, and they've increased their subscribers. I believe they got 1,000 new subscribers since April to their website, because people are subscribing to their podcast. So it's a full 360 and really thinking. And I think it really speaks to the brand, being really protective of the brand and understanding that everything they do has to be tied into that. To Prudence's point, their media kit tells this story, and their media kit to the advertisers has them want to be part of this story. Allow me to to tell you something that has to do with this brand. I'm so sorry about my coughing. Is that the word strategy is very scary to a lot of people. How do I even come up with a strategy? I think it has to do with a lot about who you want to be, what your mission stands for. And because the ecosystem is so busy and there's so much out there, I think this quote is perfect. Strategic thinking is no longer a luxury. It's a survival imperative. I feel like media companies come to us, and one of the first things they say to us, whenever this happens, I just roll my eyes and try it not to be so obvious, but one of the first questions we ask is, who's your competition? And I will tell you, a lot of people come to us and say, oh, I don't have any competition. Ladies and gents, if there's a gentleman on here, this is your competition. A travel site is your competition. Google is your competition. Everyone has competition. And if you don't know who that is, you won't be able to better serve your consumer and your audience. And most important, the community you're trying to really service. I am so excited, and I'm going to tell you about this media that is not a client. They don't need us. This is Black Ballad. I am not their demographic, and I know Paula saw me present them at AMP earlier in July. I got introduced to Black Ballad 2 years ago for something that we were doing with the Membership Puzzle Project. And I absolutely fell in love with this media organization. If you don't know them, I highly suggest that you check them out. If you can, become a member because you're going to get so much value out of it. And for any entrepreneur that's listening, I think you're going to get so many lessons. If there is an example of a true entrepreneur media, Black Ballad is it. It's a UK-based lifestyle platform that seeks to talk to Black British women, this slide says, but now they're talking to women in the United States. And I believe that a lot of what they have to say is applicable anywhere else in the world. It was launched as a newsletter, a tiny, tiny newsletter. Toby was the founder, was pregnant and she was trying to do something and it got passed around by friends. And it really became something where people sent her information and they connected. They connected and started a little community. And when you have a community that talks to each other and that really is engaged, I think you're 90% of the way there. As I mentioned, they're community driven. As I mentioned, they started as a lifestyle brand. They're not hard news, but they do cover important subjects. Their retention rate is phenomenal. I think it's very hard to find anybody else that has the kind of 95 to 98% retention rate. I think Prudence would love Black Ballad because of their revenue model. They do a lot of brand partnerships, as she clearly pointed out. I want to caution you, you should always clearly dictate that this content is brought to you by an advertiser or is sponsored so that your audience doesn't get confused as to what that is. Being fully transparent is totally important. And Toby and the team at Black Ballad is all about inclusivity and representation. No Black woman is turned away, and this old, white, not demographic woman can watch. I'm not a member, and you'll see why. They have a very tiny community of crowdfunding members. They have a large audience, but the membership is really tiny. It's only 1,400. They've got 2 members that pay 25,000 UK British pounds each. So somebody really believes in them. But that 1,400 number of members, remember, we all get stuck in the huge numbers. And I just told you, Invesco had 8.9 billion views. Don't. Think about the true engagement, and you can take that, as Prudence said, to an advertiser. What does Black Ballad cover? They cover the arts, adult issues, Black women in Britain, books and literature. They do mental health and wellness. They do money and finances. And a lot of these subject matters are introduced by their own readers. And so they allow and they encourage their readers to pitch stories. Now, you're probably thinking at this point, oh, this is sort of interesting. Are they making any money? How does this actually work? Allow me to show you. Before I do that, though, forgive me, this slide, I forgot to tell you. They have a Slack channel, and if you're a premium member, and you'll see a little bit more on that, is for the premium members. Now, I could pay the money and become a premium member, but I'm going to tell you why not, because this is brilliant. While they're very inclusive in Black Ballad, at their Slack channel, it says, I know this is very small, you might not be able to read it. It says, this is a space that we want to reserve exclusively for Black women. We respectfully ask that Black Ballad members who are not Black women do not join our Slack group. This is to ensure that Black women have a space that they can truly call their own. While there are other benefits of being a premium Black Ballad member, if you would like to change your membership, let us know. Some people might think that is excluding someone. Including other people that are not Black women is not part of their brand. So I read this as them being very, very true to their brand, which you will see has everything to do with everything that they do. A Black Ballad membership on a monthly rate, and I'm not advertising for them, but I sort of am, is not extraordinarily expensive. For monthly rate, it's less than what a Starbucks costs in the UK. We know that Britain is very expensive. The premium one is a little bit more expensive, but the reason I mention this is that you get a lot of added value. There's a lot of community. There's a Ballot business directory account. There's a lot of discussions, a lot of events. But when they priced the Black Ballot, they took a lot of time to find out exactly what that would cost. I believe one of the questions in the chat channel was exactly that. How do I price myself? Memberships and subscriptions, how do you price those? You've got to do a lot of research to make sure. And let me stop right here. A lot of times media come to us and think that membership or subscription is going to make up most of their revenue model. That is not the case. There are a few exceptions that they're only subscription based only, where they can cover most of their revenue. But for the general, I would say don't count on more than 30% if you do it right, and it takes 2 to 3 years to get there. The value add, despite the smaller audiences, as I mentioned for Black Ballot, they are extremely engaged. And so they have events and they have conversations and they have panels and they have weekender specials. And it is this type of engagement that advertisers are looking for today. Prudence mentioned, and I think somebody else mentioned talking to Unilever. You know, Unilever not only is doing some great things, but they've also got the Unilever Foundation that right now is focused on a lot of sustainability issues. So if you're doing anything with sustainability, look at what the Unilever Foundation is doing. Look at what Unilever social media, as Prudence rightly mentioned, is doing. And if you're doing something that's related to that in an event where people can come in and you can talk to them, or a webinar, fantastic webinar such as this, then that is a further proof of engagement that you can show to them that it's not just thousands and thousands of people that are not engaged, but people that are willing to be part of a conversation. Advertising is their biggest revenue stream, but membership is still a part of it. And collaboration, something we haven't talked about, but I know Sandile, and I think Toon is also doing it, very involved in collaboration. And of course, Asha with a lot of what they do. And Kathy, everything Kathy does is collaborating. She collaborates with other media organizations. But Toby was very smart. She knew clearly that she could leverage this community that she was serving, this unique proposition of talking to Black women in the UK as it originally started. And when the BBC launches a new program and a new effort that is targeted to that demographic, you bet they call her. She doesn't have to call them. The same thing with the other media outlets. She is not afraid of collaborating because she understands the value of what they can bring together with what they do. These are some of the brands that Toby is working with. As I mentioned earlier, the BBC, but she's working with Warner Brothers. She's working with Puma. She does publishing. She is working with L'Oreal. Stay tuned for a little bit more. And as Toby says, when she pitches to a brand, as Prudence was pointing out, she tells the story of Black Ballot, but there's no other media outlet that they're talking to that has this level of engagement of Black women. And there is so much to that statement that I think that Toby really understands what Black Ballot stands. And I hope that by the end of this presentation, you'll understand what Black Ballot stands for and the brand value of what they bring to the table. And they're not a client, and this is not a paid-for advertisement. I want to make sure you understand that. I just am a huge fan of theirs. They do 360 campaigns, as Prudence pointed out. It's not just your website and your event and podcast and whatever. In this example, they do movie premieres for Warner Brothers that are targeted to that demographic. Allow me to see if this is going to play. I downloaded it from Instagram, but this is Toby, the founder, and I want you to see what she has to say about something she's just launched. Let's fingers crossed that this works.
How can a Black woman like you get free beauty products and tell the brands how you really feel? As you know, Black women are beauty's most valuable consumer. We spend 6 times more on our hair care products and 1.5 times more on our skin and colour cosmetic products compared to any other racial group. Yet, beauty brands are still not doing a good enough job at giving us the products and in-store experiences and care that we deserve. That's because our voice is missing when brands have a conversation about how products are made and sold. From the boardroom to marketing teams to product development to review panels, Black women's voices are missing. Beauty brands know they need to do better, but the problem is too many beauty brands are interested in going viral with an influencer. And while there's nothing wrong in that, they should be just as interested in talking to real women, real Black women about their beauty concerns and needs. Over the last 12 months, we've been speaking to different beauty brands and experimenting with different ways to get Black women's voices heard. And now we're ready to take things up a level. Today, we are launching the Black Ballot Beauty Council, a place where you can share your expectations of beauty brands and share the encounters that shaped your view of beauty. And most importantly, we'll give you access to products and experiences that bring you joy when it comes to beauty. How can a Black...
Whoops, I'm not very good at that. I hope that played well. Over the weekend, 2 weekends ago, they did a huge L'Oreal campaign, a weekend campaign, where as soon as they launched the Beauty Council, 300 women signed up within 15 minutes to be part of this Beauty Council. And those women were invited to a L'Oreal meeting to talk about what they're not finding in the marketplace. Talk about a focus group for L'Oreal, and talk about an incredible statement of what Black Ballot can bring to the table. If you're interested in learning more about how they did this in a case study, I mentioned the membership guide and the membership puzzle project, of which we were honored to be a part of. You'll find out about how they built a safe space online for Black women and how they take member surveys into revenue streams, which I think is applicable to some of the questions that were on the chat, which I cannot see. If you're interested in taking a look at this, you can do this QR code and download those links. If not, this presentation will be available to you later. And sorry, I can't see the chat, so I don't know if I should keep it longer, but this presentation will be available to you right after this evening, and you are able to download all of those case studies and take a look at them. So I'm going to go to the next slide because I know that we're short on time, and forgive me, I just can't see the chat. I've got too many screens opened. What can we learn from what we just talked about from Black Ballot? I think Toon and Asha and Zindile, everybody talked about, diversify your revenue, but don't compromise who you are. Everything Telegram does has to do with what their values are for the newsroom. Toby knows that she is not a news person. Black Ballot is not focusing on hard news, but she also clearly understands her community because she is constantly dialoguing with them. This is not, I'm going to put it up and people will read it. She is very, very well versed on who the people she's talking to. And she's invested in her community, not just content. And I think that is really, really key. And her value proposition is a community. Telegram's value proposition is unique information that they're not going to get anywhere else. That is a deep dive into investigative pieces. And most importantly, keep that dialogue open with the audience. I think Telegram has a bit of a harder time doing that because their community is very different. It's general, it's readers, they're looking at investigative pieces and the hard, most important topics of Croatia, but not for Toby. That doesn't minimize Toby's conversation and her content and her customer base, but both are very cognizant of who they're doing. The hybrid models, Toby is a perfect example. I doubt when she launched her newsletter that she could have dreamed of what she's doing today, but she's really gone with it. She's been able to pivot. She's been flexible. She's tested. She's tried things. I'm sure not everything has worked, but just like Telegram, and for Black Ballot, the two examples, independent and uniqueness, because I think each one of you doing something is unique. It doesn't mean isolation. Collaboration with intention can yield fantastic results. This is a sort of a busy slide, but think of your operational strategy as a leadership act. I was blown away by Asha's story and Toon's story and Zindile's story, everybody's story, and how little by little they grew to what they felt they needed to be and maybe didn't start right away. The constant trying to better yourself in the research. I can tell Prudence is a research nerd like me, always looking for things that you can read about that are going to help what you're doing. The survival mode that we have all done, there isn't a single media entity that has not been in survival mode. But if you're constantly in survival mode and trying to get a grant to pay the lights and the salary, you're never going to be able to innovate. And so that is where strategic thinking and the great advice, I need to learn how to take naps and meditate, allows you to be more creative in what you're doing. I believe there's a lot of people that are attending that are very tiny media organizations or small organizations. You don't have the luxury of a lot of staff. Invest in yourself. I think this is key. Build a brand before you need it. And that applies also, it's not on this slide, but um, people sometimes come to MDIF for money, but they come to us too late. When they come to us, I had an email earlier this year with all this debacle with USAID from a median organization that is not a client. And they came to us in January for funding in February. It was impossible to do that. They waited too long. They didn't plan. Yet with the USAID debacle, it's hard to plan for that. But constantly test, constantly talk to your audience. In today's technology world, there is no reason not to talk to your audience. There's comments, there's surveys, there's so many things that you can do that I think are super, super key. Um, and remember, I felt like the slide was very important. I think the ladies that have spoken before me are not only impactful, but they're very intentional and thoughtful. Maybe not all of them quiet, and I don't think we should be quiet as women, but these women are changing everything. I think all of you are as well. The slide, I meant to delete the slide because I have too many slides, but I think it's a good slide to keep in. In the work that I do all over the world, I always hear, oh my God, my country is the worst. Oh my God, my country is the most corrupt. Oh my God, the economy in my country is worse. Oh my God, the power outages are the worst. Sound familiar? I will tell you that it's rare when we don't hear those things. So South Africa, if most of you are in South Africa, and I know Nigeria and some of the other places, trust me, you're not the worst. I think there's a lot of worst all over the world, but don't let that destiny of where you're working guide in exactly what you're doing. And I think instead, look at it as an opportunity because you have been able to overcome adversity and chaos. And I think that you, if you succeed, are going to be able to teach the rest of the world a lot of lessons. Our MDIF Chief Program Officer that some people in this call may know, Bilal Randery, recently just shared this. And I love the use of the term majority world. I haven't been very familiar with it until this year, but I think it's very, very key to what we're doing. And as the world entirely is facing unprecedented challenges, I think the global South and the majority world are going to teach us incredible stories of innovation and inspiration because you've been there, you've done it. And I think a lot of you, I think Asha and the teams from Nigeria and Kenya are going to be able to teach American journalists that have no idea what has just hit them a lot of lessons because it's about to get really challenging everywhere else in the world. Now, allow me to invite you to something. Toby has agreed to speak to us in our October Global Community Call. If you'd like to register, this is free. It's a virtual call. It's not a webinar, so you'll be able to ask a lot of questions. She's been kind enough to agree. So if you want to meet her and ask her questions, please go ahead and register. If you can't do the QR code, again, you're going to have this presentation. Let me give you a little secret. Go ahead and register, even if you don't think you can make the time, because for all of the people that register, we will send you the recording afterwards. So if something comes up or you cannot attend because of your registration, you will get the recording. So you are more than welcome, more than invited. Our list goes out to about 900 people. We have anywhere from 80 to 100 people show up. I have a feeling this one's going to be very popular. So I highly, highly invite you, if you're interested, to join and learn a little bit more about Black Ballot and how Toby got here. My name again is Patricia Torres-Burd. That's my email at the bottom. Please feel free to send me an email. We just literally this morning sent out a newsletter that I'd love to add you to if you're interested in. Send me an email and I'll forward the email to you and you can subscribe. Ironically, it's all about entrepreneurship in media. So I hope that if you're interested, you can find it. And if Paula and the Fray team give me permission to do so. Last but not least, our team has compiled a resource depository where you can find this presentation and about 700 other downloadable files. They go back till 2024, I believe. They deal with branding. Prudence mentioned CPM. There's a CPM calculator in one of those files so that you can do that. You can just download it and play with it and be able to price yourself. It'll also explain to you what CPM is, because it's okay if you don't know. It's not the end of the world. And I hope that that you can find some of that information useful. And that is it.